session is quite good because you don't have many of the hands-on of these things, and also it's good that you like the whatever the services and things we will be talking about, quite interesting services. We'll get to know a lot of new things. What are the like how you can basically integrate, like until now if you think we were talking about the storage, we were talking about the compute, that is EC2, storage, that is S3. We talked a lot about databases, all the different databases which AWS provides, and like how and they are efficient in performance, in cost saving, in data latency, and all other sort of platforms. So but now whatever we'll talk about, they are something different, and you might have not heard of few things before. You might get to know a lot of new things, so which is basically a quite interesting things. So these are nothing but these are my additional services. So just like guys, if I sound a bit low, so like sorry for that, because like, I have not slept properly. That was the reason for that. So let me know if you want me to like, if you if like you feel like that I'm sounding a bit low, so let me just know that. Okay, so these are some additional services which basically AWS provides, and there are somewhere around 25 to 26 these small services which AWS provides. So mainly from a solution architect point of view, you should be aware about these services. You should know what are the keywords which you should catch to get hold of these services. And once you get the hold of those keywords, when you map those keywords in your mind, you can easily answer the question whichever comes in these exams. So out of the 25 additional services which AWS has, so I believe somewhere around 20 questions you get in exam from that. Out of their 65 questions you get in exam, so out of that 20 questions are from these 25 services only, which is quite, and they're very easy. So with like that, these 20 numbers are nowhere, like you cannot even lose these 20 numbers. So that's the one of the good and the important concept. So out of 25, today we are covering 13, and the rest 12, 13 services, whichever will be left out, will cover up in the next session. And then we'll talk about again with some of the other things. So this was planned to cover up at the last, but as we are like, we have covered up a lot of detailed sessions, like until now all the sessions are like specific topics were of 6 hours, 5 hours. So just to get out from that space, from those longer ones, will like I've put up this in between so that we have that a momentum should be there for everyone. So today agenda, we will be talking about Snowball, we'll be talking about ops work, we'll talk about Elastic Transcoder, AWS Workspaces, AppSync, AWS Glue, CI/CD, ECS, EKS, step functions, and SWF, EMR, CloudFormation, and Trusted Advisor. So does anyone has heard any of the services before except Prasad? Well, he would have heard all those, I know.
Hey, Sachin,
Yeah,
are you sharing something?
yeah, I'm sharing. I hope everyone can see this. Can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, there is some problem, then I will rejoin again.
Okay, okay. So anyone of you have heard any of these services before?
I have heard about Snowball.
Snowball, okay, okay, great. Anything about Nisha, Palumi, Ashutosh?
No, Sachin.
No.
Okay. So fine. So let's start with the Snowball then. So Snowball is a very good service, and it's like basically it's a service which is basically a part of the migration, data migration and transfer services. So what basically you can do is that basically with help of this service, you can transfer your large amount of data, and that large really means a very, very large amount of a data. You can assume that a container of a ship container, which is there, like that it has the full of data. So that much amount of data you can store it, okay, and using the Snowball technology. So what is Snowball? Snowball is basically a mechanism where with help of which you can transfer your large amount of data from your on-premises to cloud, or from cloud to your on-premises, or from your data center to cloud. And that basically that data storage is nothing, it's like somewhere in the petabytes and these things. Now what happens is that when you initiate this process, so when you, let's say that if you initiate this process of data transfer, so at that point of time, basically from, if you initiate this process via Snowball, so AWS gives you one physical device. Okay, it not give you that, it does not give you that physical device for permanently, but it gives you for some temporary purpose, for temporary use, and then you store your data and do the things and ship it back. How it happens, we'll see this. So is like normally whenever you initiate this process, so what happened that this kind of with help of this process, you will receive some physical device, and that physical device is nothing, it will look like a briefcase, and you can connect to that and transfer your data and ship it back to Amazon, whereas then from there Amazon will completely take care of things. Now let's say why we can use this. So for very important part is the cost saving. It actually saves your cost 1/5 time. Why? Like if you have any particular dedicated internet connection or something, so whatever you do with the any other transfer mechanism, so compared to that, it saves your cost to 1/5. So if it's costing 100 rupees, with help of this it will cost only 20 rupees. Apart from that, they do provide encryption, the highly scalability, it's a simple service to connect and understand. It addresses the concerns of the high network cost, long transfer times, and security. What does it mean? That if you transfer data normally, or if you transfer some via some other mechanism, you have to bear up the network cost, which leads to very high when you transfer a petabyte of a data and these things, because they really take a lot of time. Like it's not that you're copying 2 GB of a data, so that gets copied in 10 minutes. It does not happen in that way. Petabyte of a data is a too much of data, and actually it takes time to transfer. And also there are security concerns. The best part is that you don't have to write any code, nothing is there. No need to purchase any hardware. As I mentioned, that it's a physical device via which you transfer the data, but you don't have to purchase it. It's mainly important like to transfer any large amount of data, but some of the common use cases where it is being used, and most of companies, even some startups, are also using this kind of a service, and they are like using it for migration of their analytics data, for genomics data, with video libraries, image repositories. And if some data center is getting shut down, so entire data center data is being migrated into cloud, or any other application migration projects is happening. Now, how does it work? So this is one of a briefcase kind of a physical device. So as soon as you initiate this process, so what happens that once you initiate this process, so basically you register for this physical device to deliver it to your particular place. Now, once you get this briefcase, so here what happens that you get a shipment delivery details also along with it. Okay, you get a shipment delivery details also, which is actually tagged into this along with this. You can connect to this device from your data center and these things, and then you can transfer your data into this, and then you can ship back to the delivery address, whichever it is written. That is nothing, that is basically the AWS delivery address, and from there AWS will take care to migrate the data into the cloud. Few of the features of this device is that it is rain and dust resistant, tamper resistant case is there. It comes in two sizes, 50 terabytes and 80 terabytes. Whereas 80 terabytes, like if that has changed, so I'm not sure, but to my knowledge, 80 terabyte device is available in all regions. However, 50 terabyte is available only for the US region. Okay, if that has changed, so I'm not very sure. Apart from that, it supports 10G network. Okay, it supports the 10G network, and the all data will be encrypted end to end, as like by the default AWS AES 256 algorithm. All data will be encrypted end to end. So it's basically a data import and export job. Okay, where you get the physical device, you connect to this device to your on-premises or to your data center, whatever from where you want to transfer the data. You store the data in this box, and you just ship it back to them, and they will migrate it for you to cloud. This is the process it works, that basically in your AWS console, you create an import job. you get this physical device, you connect that device to your local network, transfer the data, return the device to AWS, and you just monitor the status that whatever the amount of data and things has been imported and how much data has been transferred. So any questions here? Okay. Now this is a great way to approach and to go ahead with the data. Normally in exam, what happens that you get a question with respect to this, where if you get any physical, basically if they talk about any physical device, okay, or if they talk about the 50 terabyte of a data, 80 terabyte of a data, kind of a data, where if they have to transfer these much of data, they in that kind of scenario, you can go ahead and you can just use the answer as AWS Snowball. Okay. Now there's another, you can say another service they have launched with for Snowball only, which is actually similar to Snowball, and that is known as Snowball Edge. So Snowball Edge is nothing. It is also, it works for the same way. You get the physical device, everything is the same way. Just the thing is that it is for sub few of the AWS capabilities. Okay, and it comes with 100 terabyte of a storage capacity, which is the double of the Snowball device, which is ideally the 50 terabyte. Now, difference between Snowball and this is that Snowball, like you can import a data into S3 and you can export from S3 in Amazon. Basically, whatever data is there, you are storing it in the S3. However, Snowball Edge provides you to connect with AWS Lambda. So that is means that you can build the serverless kind of applications also, and you can import that kind of a data to connect with EC2 instances. So for whatever the data and things were there for EC2 instance, you can transfer that data also. Okay. And there is a one for IoT application, there is one Greengrass service, so you can use that also. There are a lot of different cluster of devices which you have made that you can transfer files through the NFS also. NFS is one of the file system which we have now, so in Windows and all these things, so you can transfer with that also. It basically stands for NAT file system. So the main capabilities or the main keywords for this is 100 terabyte of a storage. Snowball Edge automatically takes care of your whatever the workloads is there and the local processing and these things. And it do provide, if anywhere it is talking about a local storage, or it is talking about the local compute with AWS Lambda, these kind of keywords. So you can definitely go ahead and you can choose the answer as Snowball Edge. Here also you get physical device, you connect to it via your local network and transfer your data. But the best part about this device is that in this device you get one small GUI option. Okay, so you can assume it like a mini photo copy machine, where like in a mini photocopy machine or a printer you have this GUI screen and this. So here you have this. So what, like here basically gives you the capabilities to basically transfer and connect and all those things. So connect your device and do the things and check your storage and compute. So this is how this device looks like. Now, another thing, you were thinking what this truck is doing here. So does anyone has heard about hexabyte? Not hexa, exabyte, EXABYTE. Petabyte, I am pretty sure that by now you would have heard, but do you have heard about exabyte?
No.
So exabyte is also one of the storage which is above petabyte, and that is this truck full of a data, basically. So this is actually 100 petabyte of data is known as kind like your exabyte of data. So when you have that much amount of data, which is very, very large, which basically Amazon actually sends a truck which is actually a 45-foot long container carry with that truck. Okay, so it's a 45-foot long container which comes with that truck, and it comes to your basically your data center or whatever the place from where you have to transfer the data. It has the connectivity and all these options. You connect to that via the fiber cables. Definitely you can't connect, it's not good to connect via this. So, and for those kind of scenarios, you basically use the snowmobile. This technology is known as snowmobile. So you use snowmobile. So there are three things we talked about. We talked about Snowball, which is basically for 50 terabyte and 80 terabyte. That also has physical device. You create an import task and you do all this activity. Then we talked about the Snowball Edge, which basically transfers somewhere around the 100 terabyte of a data. Then we talked about the Snowmobile, which actually transfer exabyte of data, that is somewhere around 100 terabyte of a data, and that has a 45-foot long shipping container which comes in. So can anyone imagine or can anyone tell me, like just a random guess is also fine, that how much time will it take if you normally transfer your 100 petabyte of a data from your on-premises to cloud or any network? If you have a 100 petabyte of data, I'm saying that you have a 10 gigabyte of a dedicated network connection also coming. 10 gigabyte is too much of a like very high speed. So 10 gigabyte of dedicated connection is also coming. And if you are transferring, how much time it would take to transfer this data?
Anything more than a month?
Just a month, 100 petabytes, sir. Just a month. Let's talk about in years. Any random guess of years? More than, how many people think that more than 20 years it will take?
Oh,
It will take around 12-13 years, I think.
12, 13 years. No,
Yeah.
no, you are not too close also. Nisha, follow me. Asha,
Okay.
any random guess, guys?
$20 years.
Okay, that's you said, because I said 20, more than 20. So nice approach. So it takes 26 years to transfer this much of data from your on-premises to this. It takes 26 years to transfer this much of data. And with help of this Snowmobile, it takes only 6 months to transfer this data. This is, I'm not saying this without any facts or something. So if you go to this AWS documentation and Snowmobile, and if you see about the AWS CEO Andy Jassy, where
Our customer said, well, this is great if I have a snowmobile is a 100 petabyte container.
are you guys able to hear this audio?
Yes.
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 Yeah. Okay. Let's hear this then.
It comes affixed to a 45-foot long container and truck. The way it works, we'll drive the truck up to your data center. We'll take the snowmobile, affixed to the trailer. We have power and network fiber that will connect to your data center. Fill her up, and then the truck will come back, put the trailer back on the truck, and we'll move it back to AWS. If you think about the idea of moving an exabyte of data from on-premises anywhere, but especially the cloud, if you basically assign a 10 gigabit per second line to it, which is pretty reasonable, it would take you about 26 years to move an exabyte of data from on-premises to the cloud. Using 10 snowmobiles, it would take you a little less than 6 months. That's a pretty huge difference.
So as I said, it takes little less than 6 months as per the this, and it's like a very really interesting feature to know. However, I don't see much any of the questions in exams for this, but just for the information and for knowledge purpose, this is a very good feature and a very interesting feature to know about. I find it as a very cool feature to get to know. Okay, so any questions with respect to Snowball services, guys? So these are the three things in this: is Snowball, the Snowball Edge, and Snowmobile. Okay, if not, let's move to the other service, which is basically the AWS Ops work. Now, AWS Ops work here, Ops is nothing, it's basically stands for your operations. Okay. Now this is something related to the DevOps. I will not say DevOps as a technology because DevOps is not a technology. I'll say that I call DevOps as a culture. So this is something related to the DevOps culture, where you follow the DevOps culture and these kind of environment. So there anywhere in the exam, if you get a word chef or puppet or configuration management, it's like AWS ops work would be the answer for that, without like giving a second thought until unless if it is having some other thing. But AWS ops works will be the answer because this particular service provides you a configuration management service. It's basically a configuration management service which helps you to configure your applications using the Puppet or Chef. So there are mainly three services or three things in this. The one is the AWS Ops work for Puppet Enterprise. Other one is the AWS Ops work for Chef Enterprise, and the one is Ops work Stack. Okay. Now this works with your EC2 and the EC2 instances also. Okay. So like it's basically like AWS allows you here to create the configuration. You can write the configuration code and these things using help of the Puppet or Chef. So basically, if any one of you have idea or not about the Chef or Puppet, so in Chef basically we have the cookbooks and these things or recipes and all, whereas in Puppet we have manifest and all, like which normally we write the code. Like normally in Unix you write the server script, so there we have these kind of terminologies. Chef, it's basically just talks about the recipes. So you write recipes actually. So it actually relates it to the cooking and the chef. So where you have recipes. So here also you write recipes, but definitely not recipe for like preparing a rice or a dal, but definitely for the whatever the configuration which you have to do for that. And in Puppet we talk about the manifest. So to the development team and operations team, when they have to basically configure their infrastructure and or configure their applications. So in a DevOps environment, they actually write the configuration codes and all these things with the help of a Chef or a Puppet, and they use these things. So this has three features mainly: the AWS Ops work for Puppet Enterprise, for the Chef and Automate, and for work stacks. However, you don't get anything related to these three. You just normally get a very like randomly. Sometimes you get one question only, where specifically Puppet or Chef is mentioned, and the answer, and they talk about a configuration and these things. And for that, the answer is AWS Ops work. So AWS Ops work for Puppet Enterprise basically allows you to create the Puppet master servers, and then you create the nodes in that. So basically, like it allows you to manage it once you create the master server. So there are different nodes for your infrastructure. So that master server manages all your nodes. So basically that master server acts as your central repository for different Puppet modules or for different Puppet nodes, which are basically performing some or other kind of a task. Similarly for Chef or Chef Automate is nothing, it's a premium features. And it's then you see Chef DK and Chef tooling. So Chef DK is also one of a development kit. Yeah, it stands for a development kit basically, where it provides you a different other tools or the development options actually, and other Chef tools and these things, with help of which you can basically automate your configuration or the infrastructure configuration and these things, and you can provision your infrastructure with the help of the Chef Automate code. So it's a kind of a workflow which helps you for the continuous integration deployment, this kind of a process. So it's not very necessary to understand about these things in a detail, but Ashutosh, from your point of view, from a developer or from a SysOps examination point of view, it is very, very important, because you need to have the understanding of Chef and Puppet, and you should know that how you can configure your infrastructures via Chef and Puppet, so that you can use these kind of services via the APIs. Then we talk about AWS Ops Work Stack. So Stack is nothing basically like in AWS you create these different resources, and like those combined resources together, like it creates the stacks of those resources, so that it actually, and that entirely like builds up your application or your software, whatever you want to build it up. So it helps you to create and manage those kind of stacks as well. Any questions here? So as I said, like these are very, very small services, just very important for me for exam point of view, because it gives you too much of marks. Now, another service we have is Elastic Transcoder. As transcoder by name, it is very clear that transcode means that to convert some kind of the media files and these kind of files into some other format. So here the Elastic Transcode also do the same, where it converts your media file, that is your video or your music files, or the combination of both, and it stores in the S3 into the different format, whatever the format you wanna get it for, which is basically useful for your tablets, for your PCs and the smartphones and other kind of the electronic appliance, where basically these video and music uh, streaming and these things are allowed. So for this, the important keyword is the media files or the video or music file. It helps you to it basically whenever it converts this kind of things. So if you have anytime if you have convert the videos or a music, you might see some of the images in the video or these things are not actually of the same quality, and these things because of the conversion or the algorithm whichever is doing that conversion, that might not be that efficient, or it might be downgrading the quality or the bit rate and these things. So it helps you to bit for the bit rate optimization so that your quality and these things are not compromised. Then you have the like different thumbnails and watermarks and these things. So all this kind of things will also be captured in that. Definitely encrypted. It is encrypted. It has like some 4 component mainly, like where it job, you create the job. So you just define that what kind of a work, what kind of a media file you have to convert. Then you basically queue that job into the for the processing. So that is known as a pipeline, that you are creating a kind of a pipeline to convert your files and these things. Then the process of that conversion from one format to another format is known as presets. And even you can set up the event notification via the SNS, so that you can get to notify that if some other person is using the service and converting some kind of a file, or if you are using the service, or when the file has been converted, so you can get notified, because this process takes a little time based on the size of the your video or your music quality. Definitely entire AWS services you pay for whatever you use, that is like mostly by hourly base, completely managed by AWS. Auto scaling and these things are automatically happened here. So as it is completely managed by AWS, you don't have to worry about managing the other kind of options for this. Then we have AWS Workspace. So AWS Workspace is nothing, let's say that until now we were talking about the EC2 instances, where you get a virtual server, but AWS Workspace gives you virtual desktop only. AWS Workspace gives you the virtual desktop, not virtual server. EC2 on these things, you are getting a virtual server. You never got virtual desktop, but here you get the virtual desktop, which earlier was in Windows flavor only, but nowadays nowadays, not only now, like from past 2-3 years, they have put it up for the Linux and their variant flavors also. It is a very secure, encrypted, and completely isolated in a network, so that you can use it and you can connect it to your corporate data center or AWS cloud and transfer the data and work accordingly. As it is Windows based earlier, and also it has the Microsoft Active Directory integration very easy. So basically, it is a service which actually eliminates the management of the on-premises VDIs. And so here the main keyword could be this only, the on-premises VDI is the main keyword with help of which you can do. Or you can see that if you want to get some kind of your own workspace or virtual desktop or these things, and you want to connect it to a data center and perform some operation or something, and if AWS Workspace is the option there, so you can go ahead with this AWS Workspace option. Then I have AWS AppSync. Now, AWS AppSync is one of the service which basically allows you to sync and store your data between your mobile and your web applications in a real time. So between your mobile and your web applications in a real time, you can sync and store your data. You don't have to write the code and these things, because when it is doing that thing, so it actually generates a client end code and these things automatically, and you copy that code and you can use it with Lambda. We'll talk about Lambda in detail, or you can use it with DynamoDB also to store the data and these things. It has the real-time subscriptions, that is like the real-time notifications and these things you get. It says that offline data synchronization, which basically replace Cognito Sync. So I'll tell you what, like Cognito Sync is also the service which is very much similar to this, just like just because of one thing it is like not similar to this, that like I have missed that point right now, like I've missed that point right now intentionally, I'll tell you. And it provides you the security mechanism. Now the point which I was saying that I have missed it, so it's nothing, it's that the GraphQL. So GraphQL is also one of the technology. Okay, you don't really need to know these technologies and these things, like it is not. It's basically the mobile technology from Facebook. So Facebook internally mostly uses this technology for its own purpose, for its like mobile kind of applications and these things, whatever, like we know that Facebook has all the applications and these things. So for that it uses this application GraphQL. The reason they use this GraphQL technology, because normally the Facebook structure and this thing which is there, that is in the graphical form, like as I explained yesterday also in the session, that in the Facebook, like when you get the notifications or if you comment on your friend photo, so what happened that you also get notified about that, because it creates the kind of a graph structure that okay, a person A has commented on a photo of a person B. Now if person C is also a friend of that person, so and if person C has commented, so person A and B both will get notified. So it creates kind of that graphical and the structure so that it is linked together. Now in exam there are two important points to understand. So if it says that I have to sync the data across mobile or a web application in a real time, and if so in that case you will go ahead with the Cognito Sync. But if it talks about GraphQL in the question, then you will go ahead with AppSync only, because Cognito Sync does not talks about the does not use GraphQL. So this is the one of the important reason here. So if you one of the important difference, sorry, here between the Cognito Sync and the AppSync. So in exam, if GraphQL is the word, blindly you go and choose the AppSync as answer. Now I have the another service known as AWS Glue, which is basically a very good service to perform the ETL kind of operation, entirely managed by AWS, and the entire your extract, transform, and all these activities were good. And this is a new service by AWS. So this was not available earlier. This is one of the new service, mainly helpful for the analytics and these kind of basically analytics and tasks, where like you extract your data from the either from the S3 and these things, or let's say then you transform your data and you again load the data into the S3. So if you guys have any idea about the Hadoop or something, they basically follow the map reduce kind of a structure, where like they extract some data, map it to some data, transform it, and then again like once they have transformed it, so obviously they have reduced the data and then they again load it. So that's the reason it has like it can provision the Apache Spark, which is basically related to the Hadoop and these environments. It can crawl to different data sources and identify the data formats. Automatic code generation, again it is there. So Glue data catalog is nothing, is like if you have the metadata also of the source tables along with it, so you will go ahead with the Glue data catalog. Sources and sinks is the same, like all the AWS storage you can use as a source, and you can again use the same as a sink. Is nothing, it's like where you basically loading the data, putting them into that. Now in exam point of view, ETL is one of the keyword which is important. The another keyword which is important here is the crawling. That is, if we just like crawling, or definitely crawling you will not get there, but it's talk about like that okay, if it is going through a different data sources and identifying data formats or something, or schema inference is kind of a word is there. In that kind of a scenario, we'll go ahead with AWS Glue. However, they don't make it much complex. These kind of questions, they make it very easy only so that you can score your marks. Any question, guys, still here? Okay. Now another topic will be here, the CI/CD. So I'll be now talking about a little bit of DevOps also, where I would be talking about the few of the terminologies of DevOps so that you can understand the concept here. So this CI/CD is basically nothing. CI/CD stands for continuous integration and CD stands for continuous deployment. normally when you work in a DevOps environment or you work with a DevOps culture, what happens that your ultimate goal or your ultimate aim is to follow this particular principle, that is the CI or the CD principle. What is continuous integration is that continuous integration means that as a developer, what you will do that you will push your code to Git. Now, once you have pushed your code to Git, that is your code repository, from there, the code should go to whatever your build server is there. So let's take an example that we have Jenkins as one of the continuous integration in this, where it helps you to perform the build and all these things. So your build is performed. Build is nothing, basically your like entire like code has been packed into completely one package, and it has created a kind of one app, like a small application, or you can say a small package kind of a system, which is your build. And then it will like inform the developer about the result of a build. So this kind of process, it happens like very often. The reason, because if I have a team of 10 people and 10 people are working on one of the project development or one of the application development, they will push the code 100 times in a day. So it is very difficult to like build the code like after each and every one, because we don't know that there are so many frequent git push would be there, so that I'm not able to identify also that which is happening at what time. So this build server actually, like whatever the tool you are using, it has these capabilities to identify, and like as soon as any git push operation happens, so what happens that as soon as git push operation happens, so there are certain triggers and these things which, like, I'll not go much detail into the DevOps, but there are certain triggers and these things which basically just keeps on polling into your git repository and checks if any git push happens. So as soon as git push happens, what it will do that it will take that particular code, it will test it out, and it will create the build for you. So that this basically helps you to save like from the lot of manual tasks, and the developers will have more bandwidth and more things to work. They will get the immediate notification and these things. Otherwise, like what happened that you have built a code right now, you are dependent on someone else also, and he or she is waiting for the other code that he or she is like getting that code ready. Like until then you are working on some other code. So by the time build has happened, what happened that you forgot half of the logic, only what you have written in that code. Okay, or that code has been changed again by someone else or something. So you really didn't got to know that, okay, like what has been done and all. So it's a bit of complex way, or it was a complex approach to analyze or test it that code again and fix the errors. But with continuous integration, like these kind of issues has been resolved, as it basically concerns and basically addresses these kind of issues, and these are resolved with this. When we talk about continuous deployment, so the entire process is same. It's just that it helps you to deploy the code also. So there are different deployment tools. There basically the deployment tools and the languages are also there, which basically technologies are there which helps you to deploy your code into your prod development or your test environment, whatever the environment you want to do. And it also maintains the version control, definitely, because it is coming from any of the code repository, whether it would be Git or whether it would be your SVN repository. So it will maintain the version code. So now your first version is deployed, so you will see that application server v1 has been deployed. If any other has been deployed, then it will go to v2, v3, and so on. So here this entire process is like talking about the continuous, like continuously your code integration is happening. It is being deployed to your test environment or the prod or dev environment, these things. So when they talk about something, this kind of a terminologies, or they like specifically, they a lot of a time mention a very direct way. So you will choose the AWS CI/CD service. Let's see what kind of service and details they have here. So if you see, normally what happened that you write the code, you build it, test it, deploy, and provision it to the server and these things. So what kind of AWS services can be used for this? Basically, like where the CI/CD it is. So guys, just for the understanding point of view, it is completely the AWS DevOps concept, which is another path only. So people who want to become the AWS DevOps professionals, they use these kind of services. From a solution architect, you should just know this, that okay, how it is. But again, from a developer point of view, Ashutosh, for you, this is a very important thing. So because you should, as a developer, you should follow these kind of approaches, and you should utilize these kind of services. So as your code or these things will come, so definitely it will be stored in some repository and these things. So for that, they have a service known as AWS Code Commit, where they do provide like these kind of tools, or they do provide integration with these things. They also have their inbuilt commit and these things repositories stored. For build and test, actually they have a service combined together known as AWS Code Build. You can do this with even with Jenkins CI or with GitLab CI or any other CI server tools. There are a lot of tools available in market. And basically there you create the pipeline and all these things to perform this job. And to deploy and provision, there is a service in AWS which we will talk in the next coming sessions about the AWS Elastic Beanstalk, which basically helps you to deploy and provision your application very quickly. Okay, so it is nothing, it's like comprised of the AWS code deploy. So for deployment you are using that, and to provision, like we use the EC2 instances, like user manage EC2 instances fleet. That is something that is your cloud formation, which we will discuss at the end of this session. And this entire thing is known as the AWS code pipeline, or if we normally talk in DevOps terms, it talks about the pipeline. So this entire orchestration activity talks about the AWS code pipeline. Any questions here? Anyone? Okay, now let's go a little bit more deep into the DevOps kind of things only. So we have another important service from which definitely one question is there in exam. That is the AWS ECS, that is the Elastic Container Service. This is nothing, it's basically Elastic Container Orchestration Service. This is related to the Docker. Container word, if you get anywhere the container word in the exam or these things with the Elastic keyword also added to it. So it is related to the Docker only. So and there you can go ahead with the, or you get a Docker or these kind of terminologies, you can go ahead with ECS. But as we'll go ahead further and we'll talk about 1-2 more things, then there we have to actually just check with the hint and see that what actually has to be used. Now this, if you go here into this, so here like there are ECS core and the Fargate. ECS core is one of the component and these things. So basically AWS ECS service is a bit complicated service to understand. So like because they run these containers on the EC2 instances. Whatever the EC2 instances which are there, from that they will deploy the container, and then on that container you deploy the applications. So just for your information, let me explain you. So normally what happened that you have virtual servers. Okay, all of you would have worked on this. You would have installed VMwares anytime in your laptop. Is there anyone who has not done so, like, or not aware about the VMware or virtual box or these things, where you install and then you copy the ISO image of any other OS and you work on that? Like in the same, this Windows laptop only, I'll install that software and copy the ISO image and do the things. Is there anyone who has not done this kind of scenario, or not aware of this kind of scenario? Okay, I'll assume silence says that everyone is aware about this. Okay. So what happened that there is a virtualization concept. So in virtualization concept, what happens that if you install that particular virtual box or VMware in your laptop, that is, let's say if this is my laptop and Windows laptop, and this I am installing that, it will utilize the resources of my laptop. Okay, like it will take RAM from my laptop. It will take whatever the underlying hardware resources would be there. It will do this. But when you talk about containerization, like which is basically the concept of a Docker, or when you talk about containers, then it does not work in the same way. It does not utilize your underlying hardware resources and these things. Okay, then there are a different concept and things comes in. So it works with that. So basically containers, like you can create different 3 containers. Okay, how it helps is, so let's take an example that in your server, if you have to run two applications, one has to run with Java 8 and one has to run with Java 14. Okay, now at a time in your system, you can run with only one application, one version of Java. You can't run with 3 versions of Java at a time. But with the help of containers, what will happen is that in one container you will deploy all those containers are lying right now also in the same OS. Okay, but the container, one container you will deploy the Java application with version 8, one way you will deploy the Java application with version 14, and now you can run both of them parallelly or both of them simultaneously and it will not give you any issue. Okay. So this is the concept of a container. So they are isolated, and like it's a very detailed concept of a containers if you go into that. But for our understanding, let's understand this, that it is used in a Docker and it follows the containerization concept, which is quite similar to virtualization, but some differences are there definitely. So it consists of one of the ECS core concept, which is nothing where like EC2 instances this Elastic Container Service runs upon. There's also one Fargate. So Fargate runs basically on AWS provisioned servers only, being provided by AWS itself. So basically it's a serverless concept. Fargate we will talk about in few seconds. Then we have EKS also, that is Elastic Kubernetes Service. And so that is basically to manage the containers and these things. We'll talk about that. Now we have ECR. ECR is nothing. ECR is my Docker Container Registry. Okay, or we say the Elastic Container Registry, which basically stores the images of a different you can say the operating systems or these things. Okay, and these are very popular microservices, and you can apply the security and roles with the IAM and these things. Now from exam point of view, if they talk about the container orchestration service, or if they talk about the Docker and these things, you will choose ECS. But if they talk about that, okay, they are storing the images, or they are like retrieving the images and these things, then you will talk about ECR, because they will use ECR is nothing. It's basically a repository where different images are stored, for which Docker or container actually utilizes that to run or to initiate the process. Any doubt, guys, here? Or you guys are not at all understanding or anything? Guys, are you able to hear me?
Sorry, can you please repeat again? Sorry, Elastic Container Service.
Okay. So Elastic Container Service is one of the container orchestration service. So now this basically depends on the Docker. Docker is one of the concept where you create your different containers. Now in those containers, you can deploy your applications, and which can run parallelly at the same time which can run. Okay. Now this concept is quite similar to virtualization, but virtualization uses underlying hardware resources and these things. However, in containerization, that concept does not like fits in. So you use different kind of other concepts. Now, as per ECS service, there is one ECS core is one of the component of this ECS service, which is not, one component is ECS core and one component is Fargate. When you are using serverless means like you are using Lambda functions. Okay. For now, let's understand this. But however, serverless is just a concept that where AWS manages your entire thing. You don't need to worry about infrastructure. You just worry about your code. You write your code and run it. Okay, you don't have to configure any EC2 instance or any server and configure it and install the tools and these things. That all AWS takes care in serverless kind of a concept. So ECS has two components. One is ECS core and one is Fargate. ECS core is nothing, basically that is your, like when you are running the Elastic Container Service on user provisioned EC2 instance, which you are initiating the instance and instantiating the instance and doing the things. Okay, you are provisioning the instance. When you are talking about a serverless, so in exam when they are talking about serverless, you will talk about Fargate. Now there is one more service which is associated with ECS, which basically again runs on AWS provisioned this only, that is on EC2 only. It is known as Elastic Kubernetes Service. I'll cover up this in few seconds. ECR is one of the repository which stands for Elastic Container Registry, which is nothing basically where all your images, okay, images is nothing, you can understand that it is like your Windows ISO copy, your Linux ISO copy, and the other kind of different copies, OS images and other things are stored in one of the repository. So that entire repository in terms of Docker, it is known as Docker Hub, but in terms of here in terms of AWS, it is called as ECR, that is Elastic Container Registry. So ideally what happens that when you have to run any, or when you have to install any OS in any of the container, so you pull that image from that repository. Okay, you pull the image from the repository and that is actually installed in your container. Okay, you don't like go and install you don't go buy the software and then install it, or install the product key and these other things. You just copy that, just pull that image and install it. And that image will be pulled from the repository of the registry wherever it is stored. Okay. These are like very useful services. ECS and these Docker and all these things are very useful microservices. So is it clear, Abhijit, now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I was talking about Fargate. Now, this is what difference, but that in exams sometimes they give you ECS and Fargate both the option. What we forget is about either we'll get a direct word serverless, or we'll get AWS provisioned instances, or we will get Lambda word in appended. Because serverless you can do with Lambda on most of the times. I'm not saying that all the time, but most of the time, maximum time you do with Lambda only, because Lambda is something where you write the functions and these things, and you like write your code and these things. So if Lambda and if serverless, if AWS provision comes with ECS or with any container service keyword, you will go ahead with Fargate. Otherwise, you will go ahead with ECS only. Okay. What happened that when you launch your ECS cluster, you have to create your EC2 instances. So if you have to scale it and all do the things, what you do basically, you will increase the EC2 instances, you will manage the infrastructure and all this. Fargate is a serverless technology, so you just forget about infrastructure. You think that there is serverless, by the name means no server. But ideally this is not there, because there is no magic that application is running without server. It runs on a server, but that entire thing is being taken care by AWS. Your task is to create task. Your goal is to create task or write code and just take care of your code. And AWS will run those containers and these things for your own. You don't have to worry about the managing of the infrastructure and provisioning of the infrastructure. And if you have to scale it up or do the things, you just increase the task numbers. Means you just increase your task. That's it. Because you don't have EC2, so you will not able to do that EC2 one. So Fargate is for serverless, and that is for ECS. Normally is for ECS. Now we have EKS. EKS stands for Elastic Kubernetes Service. Kubernetes is again one of the tools supported, like related to the DevOps culture and DevOps environment only, which is basically used to manage these Docker containers. Okay. Docker containers, we have like application and things are there, but Kubernetes is used to manage Docker containers. Now, EKS is one of the service being provided by AWS to manage this Kubernetes cluster on cloud. If you deploy or if you run this Kubernetes cluster on cloud, you can manage these by this. The one important part is that this Kubernetes is an open source technology. Okay, so Kubernetes, like this is like the all, like anyway Docker is all also it's the open source only, but like at some point of time you have to give the pricing and things. So that's the reason no one says that open source. So for automatic deployment, scaling and management of the containers and all these things, or management of the containerized applications, we use Kubernetes. Can work entirely like ECS. Of course, the APIs and these things will be different. It also supports EC2. Okay, and like if you want to deploy the nodes and these things, or if you want to deploy the serverless containers in that case. Okay, so this service is actually helpful if you have the Kubernetes on premises or anywhere others, and you want to migrate to AWS. So you can use the EKS service. So anywhere if migration and these kind of related words comes in, EKS will be the option. Or deployment kind of the deployment word comes in, EKS will be the option. Anywhere pulling the repository, pushing up, retrieving or pushing up the image, these kind of things, or storing in the repository, these kind of things comes in, answer would be ECR. Otherwise, ECS. ECS also, if serverless, then if Fargate is the option, then Fargate. Else ECS only. Clear? Prasad, I think hope this is clear.
Yes.
Okay. Now, guys, this is another like important topic and very important to understand, step functions. So there is basically in terms of two things, step functions and SWF. I see normally like they ask one question with respect to step function and SWF. Now, this is one of the step function is one of the service provided by them. Mainly it is helpful for coordinating your work across the distributed components. Okay. It is mainly helpful for coordinating the work across the different components. It actually builds the serverless visual workflow for you. Okay. To orchestrate your Lambda functions. Guys, notice here one thing, that wherever I'm using serverless, you see that whether in PPT also Lambda is added to that, because serverless cannot be done without Lambda most of the times. So serverless visual workflow to orchestrate your Lambda functions. Okay. So this here, one keyword is this only from exam point of view. Another keyword is state machine. Represents flow as a JSON state machine. If the state machine comes in, then also this words come in. Okay. Now let's try to understand this. Okay, let's not focus on the PPT right now, and let's try to understand this, because the things which I'm telling that is not written in PPT. These step function, or if I say this SWF, simple workflow service. Okay. Basically, these works are implemented using the workflow models only. Okay, these are implemented using the workflow models. If you talk about the use cases, let's say if you talk about the use cases and these things, you see order management system. Okay, in order management system, what is that? That you create a workflow. Okay, billing management system, you create a kind of a workflow. Okay, workflow would be what? That you will say that, okay, start here and like do this operation, do that operation. If fails, then do this. Okay, you can manually, you can intervene also. There would be human intervention can be done. You can stop or pause it at a time you want to do that. So these kind of things you can do that. It also for the video encoding systems and for image conversion systems also, you can use this kind of service, step function, that's SWF. Okay. Now, normally, if you are designing any workflow based system, so if anyone has worked on the order management application or billing management application, or if do you have any idea about that, normally what happened that your first task will be that you create that particular workflow. In the billing management also, first you create a workflow that okay, order come, or order management system, you create a workflow that order comes in. Okay, order came in, then how you like you are processing it, how you are putting the entry in your ledger and all those things, and then you are making a record of that order when it is going out. So how you are actually like just reducing one number in your from your stock, that okay, this has been sold out. So this kind of things, like you create a workflow kind of a flow chart you create it. Now in this entire flow chart, there are a lot of concerns which you have to address. The first concern would be that how you can manage the transitions between the states, whatever the different states are there, how you can manage those transitions. Another one is that how you can monitor it. Then it would be how you can control the execution. That is how you can start it and pause it if you want to. Okay. If there is error, how you can handle those kind of errors. Okay. And if you have to integrate that also with some other tool, then how you can do that. So if you consider these kind of concerns, so it was very important to have some platform which can do all this activity for you. Okay. So AWS came up with one of a service which basically understands all these concerns. I'll repeat the concerns: that managing the transition between the states, monitoring them, controlling the executions, handling the error, and integration. So AWS came up with one of the with the service which basically does all this activity for you. Okay, which or like here also it would be like mostly that if it is a managed service, then it will be more important. So AWS has made this as a managed service only, that you don't have to worry about the management of the infrastructure and these kind of things. It will take care of it on itself. Okay. So it is a management service, and so hence they came up with this service which is known as the step function and SWF. Okay. Now you can integrate these with your EC2 instances, ECS, and the API gateways and all these things. Okay. And it says that possibility to implement human approval features. I mean, if you have to do any authorization or these things, let's say your order, if it has to go out from your warehouse, so it has to get some approval, right? That okay, this particular order is going out, so it has to get some approval. So that approval will definitely be the human, or if it is a robot only, so it is a kind of a human only, but you have automated that process or something, but that authorization is being there, so which you will be doing. Okay. Now similarly for simple workflow service also, like as I said, that these all are used for coordinating all your work and these things. Here also code runs on EC2. The one difference is that step functions is serverless. It is not serverless. Here you have to run this on EC2. Okay. Let's forget about this activity step and these things right now. This particular feature, this particular service has this built-in human intervention step and all these things. Okay. Now, if you understand this workflow, okay, so this is how like basically you create the workflows. Okay, and based on that, like when you start the job, so it says submit a job and like wait for some second, get job status, job complete, and these things. Let's just understand it like this. I'll show you some real example of real workflow example. And like once you start, so based on that, whatever the start, field, and cancel job is there, based on that you get the color coding and it ends. Okay, let me just show you one real example for this. So yeah, I hope it is a bit clearer, but this image is a little small. So this is one of the workflow for invoice for order one. So what happened that as workflow starts, invoice is created. Okay, now invoice create update choice is basically written here, which is function which says that okay whether the invoice created or not. Now update is happening and then approval happened. Once approval happened, then like invoice will be sent, receiver will get that invoice, voucher will be created, a sort of messages will happen, and all these things will happen. It will send the payment reminder, and then it will like again that voucher. Then once the payment and all these things will happen, then the transaction will be updated, and at the end it will be end. You see that all this is interlinked. So this entire workflow is interlinked, and this entire workflow you have to create it. Okay, for these kind of services, when you are building this kind of order management in these applications, you have to create this kind of a workflow. Now, normally in AWS, normally in this SWF, that is simple workflow service, these state transitions, they are handled by the deciders. Okay, they are handled by the deciders. So there is a decision step. So whatever the state transition is happening means from one state when it is going to another state, it is being taken care by the decider. And there are multiple, and you can have multiple deciders, as you saw in that diagram also, that particular entire workflow is a cyclic kind of a structure. So you can have multiple deciders. Whereas in step function, okay, in the step functions, it is actually handled by the state definition. Okay, and that state definition would be one only per workflow. For entire workflow, there will be one state definition. Okay. Now again, you can control these. Now once the state transition and these things you have added, now what you can do, you can control it. So controlling means you have to involve some human action or something you are doing it, or authorization. So you can control the states. Okay. So for that, in SWF, that is in simple workflow service, you basically look for signals. Okay, that is when signals, you give signals to stop or pause. Whereas in step function, you give callback task. Okay, callback task is nothing but basically it gives you that entire work. Like it says that okay, like reverse the task and these things. Okay. Now, apart from this, you can what you can do is that you can basically use these deciders, and you can basically use, with the help of these human interventions, you can create the entire workflow, and then you can build up the application. So I understand that by now, looking at this much of theory and these things, I'm pretty sure that everyone would have confused that what is this and what I'm telling about these things. So let me like just go through the things once more, like in a very small manner, so that you can understand now with the differences. So step function, you use step function when you have serverless. Okay, when you have to build kind of a serverless applications, and simple workflow service when you are running on a EC2. Apart from that, how you decide that whether I have to use a step function or a simple workflow is by deciding a signal, that if you need any external human intervention, or if you need any external signals, okay, so for your task execution or for transition states and these things, so if you need any external signals, you will go ahead with SWF. Otherwise, you will go ahead with step function. Or if the below state, or you can say it as a child process, which I say that this process. So here you see that if this process, let's say, if this process has to give the reply to this process, which is basically the parent for this, and this is the child. If it has to give some response to this, in that case also, what is happening? It is there is a signal only, like signal only being sent. Then also you will be using the simple workflow service only. So whenever question comes in exam for this, so this concept is a little bit complicated, but to answer this question is very easy, because whenever a question comes related to this, you have to look for serverless and non-serverless. That is the one deciding factor. The other deciding factor is the external signal. If how much control you need for your thing. Okay, you have to think that how much control you need in this entire orchestration activity, okay, or in this entire orchestration logic. As per AWS says that try to use step function. Okay, to serve your purpose, try to use step function. If it requires any external signal, then only go ahead with simple workflow service. The reason why AWS says that, because that is a serverless. That is the serverless. So that is one of the reason it says. And in step function, there is one more keyword known as a state machine. This keyword also is important for this thing. Okay, any question guys here?
So Sachin, if I understand correctly, AWS workflows, you have to write functions and then you have a graphical interface where you can link the relationship and call each function. Is it something like that?
Yes, it is something, it is like that only. You have to, yeah, you have to write the deciders and all those things. Yes. In AWS.
Okay.
So I'll share you guys one link also, that is not AWS link. So I'll share you one link, okay, where this entire thing is actually being like written very well, and like also like a very well for explanation. I know that this is a little complex process to understand in a single go. So you guys go through that link also, and after that also, if you think that okay, there is some doubt or something, just let me know. I'll like try to get some other kind of example so that we can understand it more in a more better way. If like you guys are still in doubt or confusion, I'll share you one link. I can share you right away also.
And also, Sachin, if you can share some practical implementation of this.
For this, there is no such practical implementation, but let me see if there is something. I'll definitely share. But from architect point of view, actually, you don't really need. That is the reason, like we are not. But I'll see and I'll share it.
Okay.
So this is the link. You guys can look around, and this link. This is a very good like blog written, so you guys can take a look from this. Okay, let's talk about the other service, that is EMR, Elastic MapReduce. Now, this is by name like Elastic MapReduce. If anyone would have any idea about the Hadoop or the big data and these things, so wherever this kind of a keyword is written, Hadoop, big data, Spark, and these things, so it or MapReduce. Okay, it is like the EMR on MapReduce will be always used with these kind of terminologies, and EMR is just a function, or just like EMR stands for Elastic MapReduce, which basically helps AWS here helps you to create your Hadoop clusters or your big data, and then analyze that kind of a data and analyze that data. Okay, so it helps you. This service helps you to create the Hadoop clusters in cloud. Okay, you can create different hundreds of the clusters, and these things you can create, and you can support the Apache Spark and the like it supports Apache Spark, HBase, Flink, Presto, and these kind of a different things. They're very important for machine learning and these things. Let's see this service in detail. Let's go to EMR. So you see, this is a managed Hadoop framework, basically. MapReduce, and this I already told you when I was talking about the AWS Glue, that is actually useful for ETL. So it's a web service which enables business researchers and data and developers to process vast amount of data. Okay. Now, what you have to do is that the process is that you upload your data and process like from into the S3. Okay. Then you configure and like you create your clusters. Once you are done with all those things, so basically after that you perform all the operations and these things, and you monitor the health of those clusters. So this is how we can go ahead and we can create the cluster. Let's say I've given the cluster name is this, and let's say I have the elastic map reduced S3 folder, like it says it has created. Now you see here, this is the step execution. So with this step, like it basically like you can add some steps and you can terminate it once it is done. So like once you have entire activity is done, so you can use that also. In that scenario, like you have to add different steps and these things. But let's not go into that. Let's see the cluster mode. So here you can configure, you can choose the software configuration release for basically, you can choose the EMR release. Now you can choose, these are the different Hadoop related applications which are supported by AWS. That is Spark, Presto, HBase, and Core Hadoop, which comes with different versions, and along with that comes different other softwares. So like I'm not very much aware about the Hadoop and all, like a very basic idea I have. So like if you have any questions, just put to me. I'll see if I can answer that. Then here you can put up the hardware configurations or instance type, and like whatever the instance type you want to put, you can put, and you can write how many instances you want. So whatever the instances you want, in that 3 means 1 master and 2 core nodes. 4 means 1 master and this. Let's say if I say 15, so master will always be 1 and other will be your core nodes. Okay, and if I say 1, then it will be 1 master node only, and there will be no core nodes. And you have to choose your EC2 key pair here. So you can choose the EC2 key pair. It will create the EMR default role and these things, and you can create the cluster. Mainly it is for the big data and these kind of people. Like you can choose this option by going, like that was a quick option. If you can go to this advanced options. So here you can choose different software. So these are the different list of softwares which are being provided. TensorFlow, I know that is used for machine learning and all these things. Uzi, Maud, Jupyter, Pig, all these are related to Hadoop only. Entire all this is related to Hadoop. Jupyter Hub, I know that this is the data scientist guys and all these people, they use it for writing their Python codes and all in Jupyter Notebook, and Jupyter Hub basically manages those Jupyter Notebook. You can have multiple master nodes also for the high availability. You can, if you have any other Hive table and all those things, so you can add that. Here you can add any software settings, like if you want to add any jar files or if you have to do these things, so you can do those kind of options. Now, like this is a step-by-step process for the same. Similarly, here you can choose the hardware. Yeah, here you can choose the hardware. These are the different types of a hardware, and like you can basically choose that what kind of a hardware you want for your core or for your node services, how about for your task services and these things. So like these core node and task would be much related to Hadoop and these things. So you can do that. Then here is like you can basically enable the logging and all those things, termination protection and these stuffs. Now this is for the security where you are actually adding the permissions and these things just to avoid being accessed by someone else. So this is just like the overview I wanted to give, that how this looks like. So this is mainly anywhere Hadoop clusters and these things comes in. We'll talk about the EMR. So this is how it works. Like you can integrate with Lambda, storage services, and other things. And like first step, what happened, that this master node like is being created. It has all the software installed, and the task and these things will be there. Then it basically under the core, all these nodes and core and task will be there. So it basically allocates the task to different cores and task services. And then from it basically pushes the data pulls the data from S3 or DynamoDB or from Redshift, any of the storage, and it process the data and like perform all the analytical or other operation which it has to do, and then push it back to the storage service. Now, whatever the logs and these things will be there, they will be stored again in the S3 bucket. Any question, guys, here? So next is very important concept, cloud formation. One question definitely is there in the exam for this. So cloud formation is very important concept. Now, until now, whatever we have done or whatever we saw is what we saw, that Just a second. Sorry. So until now we saw that we are creating the EC2 instance, we are creating network groups, security groups, network ACLs, VPCs, databases, S3 buckets, and lot elastic IPs and lot of other things we are creating manually. Now all this manual task is really a tiresome job, because at the end of the day or at the end of the project, you even don't know that in what region or in what AWS account you have created what. And you can't really like say that, okay, I can maintain Excel or I can maintain something for this to make a note of that, because you can't actually maintain it, because you don't even know that what is going in the background also if you are creating the one of a service. So what other things are being created with the help of that. So as this kind of things, and this is a very typical thing. So normally what happens that you would like to have a kind of a system or a service where you can deploy your code by giving that, okay, I want this. I want one EC2 instance, I want one security group, I want 2 elastic IPs, I want S3, I want load balancer. You write that thing in your code and it will automatically do everything for you. You don't have to do anything. You just write, like put that code, hit enter, and go for a good nap or go for a good cup of a coffee. That's it. And by the time you come back, you see that everything is configured. So cloud formation is that kind of a service which is being provided by AWS and is known as the infrastructure as a code service. So by the name itself, it's very clear that infrastructure as a code service means that it basically provisions your entire infrastructure for you. You just have to define what resources you want. It creates the stack of all those AWS resources, configures it, provision it, and manage it on its own for you based on the template or the code which you have given. Now, this template could be either in the JSON format or it could be in the YAML. YAML is one of the language basically supported or like mostly used for the Ansible and these things also, the Ansible playbooks and these things. So let's leave about that, but just understand that YAML is again one different language. You really don't have to worry about that, because I'll tell you some other shortcut methods and you can learn from that. Why you want to use this? You will want to use this because it will give you the design of your resources. It will give you the visual representation of your resources, and it is really a cool feature to see. By now, whatever you have done, like I'm missing Saurabh today in this call, Prasad, because if Saurabh would be there, he would have liked this feature. By the time he was asking these things, but today he's not there. Okay.
Yeah.
So it actually shows you that how you can actually design the things and you can use the things. Okay, how you can even you can replicate your infrastructure in this with the help of this service, and it also maintains the version and these things, because your code will be stored in the Git repo or in any of the repo you will store it. So for a security and these purpose, so it will maintain the versioning also. Before going into the code, and I have a demo for this. So before going into this, let's understand how this happens. A user wants or user has stored a, so what user can do is basically that user can either create, like user has created a template. Now he can store that template either in a S3 bucket or in his local machine, and then he will upload that template into the cloud formation. That template would be in nothing, it would be in JSON or YAML. Now that template, whatever the task and things will be there. So with the help of the AWS console, CLI or API, with the help of any of these things, it will provision the whatever the resources you have mentioned in that template. It will provision all those resources for you. Okay, so basically it will create the stack like this for you. It will do all this entire work for you. Now there are few components which are very important to understand here. Is one is stack and other one is template. Stack is nothing but it's basically the collection of your AWS resources. AWS resources means your S3, your load balancers, EC2, database, whatever you want to do. All those are this, which is basically created as per the template or whatever that you have written in your template. Cloud formation helps you to create those stacks, update those stacks, and delete those stacks. Okay. Leave the another line that can be as simple as one resource to entire web application. It's a Like, I don't know why I've written that. It's no use line. So let's go ahead with the another one. It says must all be created or deleted successfully for the stack to be created or deleted. This line is very important to understand. This line means your stack will, whatever your stack will be created only when all the resources which are there in the template are created. Otherwise, just this particular the infrastructure, whatever you want to provision, it will not be created. And if you are deleting also, then all the resources, when it will be deleted, then only you can delete, then only your stack will be deleted. Otherwise, it will not. If it cannot create this, so what will happen? It will roll the stack back to the previous version or whatever it is, and automatically deletes the whatever the resources which were there, which were created for that part of stack. Let's say that you have defined 5 resources. Out of 5 resources, 3 are created and 2 are unable, like 2 it is unable to create due to some unforeseen issues. Now it will roll back those 3 also, because your resources are it cannot create your resources. Similarly for deletion, whatever any resources which are retained, like which are unable to delete it, like so, but until your stack is not deleted, it will just retain those resources. Okay, for you. We'll understand this when we'll talk about the code. If you make any update and these things in the stack, so let's say that right now you have some 5 resources in your stack, and now you are making update to have 2 more EC2 instances. That means now you want 7 resources. So it will check for the current state that, okay, these 5 resources are there in the stack. So it will just make the change only to those 2. It's not that it will reinstall all those 7 EC2 instance for you. It will see that, okay, 5 already are running, 2 I have to put more because user want 2 more. So it will actually put those 2 more, and you can apply permissions and all based on the things. Now there are 2 type of update. One is a direct update and other one is via change sets. Before that, you can monitor the stack updates, the update of your stack and these things via the stack events. Direct update means immediately the deployment will happen. Okay, so like just a quick deployment where you think that there is no issues to the users or there are no downtime and all those things is required, you can directly go ahead and you can deploy things. But there are certain scenarios where you want to actually preview the updates and or update sets and these things, and you want to see that whatever has been changed, this should not have any impact to any other application, not impact to any user or any other component, whatever is dependent to that, whatever the upstream downstream would be there. If it is not having any impact, what it will do, it will go ahead and then like you basically look for a downtime and these things, and then you deploy it at a particular time. Okay. Now if update are
Sachin, while using this service, if I have to use an EC2 instance, then do I have to create an AMI for it?
No, nothing. I'll show you how you can do that. It's a completely
Okay.
yeah. I'll show you the code. I have that code. It's like very it's a very big code. This is the some 200 lines of code. I'll show you. I'll show you how you can get code also, so don't worry. Okay. Now updates, you can cancel the update of the stack anytime. Like if the update is in update in progress status there, like if the progress for of this current status for the update is update in progress, then you can cancel it also. And once you cancel, like again, like anyways, the things will roll back to the other one, to the previous stack updates. Okay. These things can happen. Now you can, like any unintentional updates or any deletion policies and these things, if you want, you can actually define those things in the stack policies. There's a stack policy where you can basically prevent users or prevent someone to give any unintentional update or any unintentional deletion and these things. Now template is very important because this is the entire thing which you create and from where your stack is created. So you put all your configuration details and these things for which the stack has to be created in your template. There is a template designer also. So with that also you can basically visualize that how your resources are created and how it is modifying, how it will look like. Now this is the particular typical template syntax. So what it says that it has format version where it will say that it has a version date. So this is the thing, this is my AWS format version, which is the version date. Okay. Description, you define that description, whatever the description, like normal description you want to put. Then you have metadata, like if you want any other additional details. Resources is very important field here, and that is only the mandatory field in entire template. So if you see resources, yeah. So resources is what, like where you, here I have defined my EC2 instance resources, what is the type, what would be my user data, instance type, security group, okay, key names, any image ID, and these things. If I want to do these kind of resources, I will define it here. So instance security group, okay. Now IP address, that I want to allocate elastic IP address, so I have defined elastic IP address. I want to associate the elastic IP, like once an instance is created, so I want to associate it, so I put IP association and these things. Now I have parameters. Parameters are nothing, they are like some custom values where it says that you have defined the description, okay, what is the default one you use, what are the allowed values, mean what all kind of a version you can create it. So you can define those kind of architecture. Okay, what could be the key name, key pair name, basically these are the things. What would be the SSH location, like if you enable the SSH port and these things, so it will allow to all the IP address or not. What would be the pattern of that IPM, these things are there, okay. Then I have a mapping, yeah, this is the mapping. So this is again like the optional component which you want to create, so you can create that. You can, here I have mapped it to the architecture, like each architecture is mapped like with this, you see here all the architecture and these things are mapped, okay. Then here I have mapped it for my NAT architecture if I want to create any NAT instance, so for that it can be done. So similarly other AMI images and these things I have mapped, okay, in the code itself. Now then if you want to define any conditions, any transformations, like transformations are nothing, like there are some macros which are to process the template and these things you do. Output is nothing, output is basically like what kind of a result you want from the this code once this entire template has been created, when this stack has been created. So here I have written that I want instance ID and instance IP address. These are the two things I want, and I want to like the message to print it as an instance ID of newly created EC2 instance is this, IP address of newly created EC2 instance is this. Okay, this is my output. Now let's see that how it can do. I have not written this big code. I don't write 200 lines of code. Okay, so so go to Google, type AWS CloudFormation templates. Okay, here you have some predefined templates for AWS. Click on this sample templates. Okay, here you will see that you will have the sample templates for almost most of the topics, or okay, whatever you want to create for most of those, you have the sample templates. Here I have chosen for my example like the EC2 one, so I am going with EC2. Now with this EC2 template, there are three templates basically which it provides. One that to launch a EC2 instance in a normal security group. One is to launch the EC2 instance with elastic IP address, and one with a permal drive. A permal drive, can Nisha tell me what is a permal drive? Nisha, you are there in the call?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what is a permal drive? Abhijit?
Sorry, don't remember exactly.
Follow me?
Yeah, Sachin, I am also not able to recall.
Then the left one is Prasad. No, sir.
So,
Yeah, it's basically the instance store that you're talking. So EC2 instance store, where it is not EBS backed volume, it's an instant back volume.
Exactly. So it's the EBS, not the EBS one, but the instance one, which you put it. So this is the where like if the instance terminates, all your data will be lost because it's a permal which is attached to actually the physical device. Okay, now here there are options that okay, like you can view the code, you can view in the designer, and even you can launch the stack from here itself. Okay, you can launch the stack from here itself, but we will not do these things. What I have done, like I will click on this view option and I have went to this, I'll get this code. Okay. So normally this code is in the JSON format where you can like basically you can now configure it accordingly as per your requirement. And you can choose whatever the whatever your requirement is, you can choose according to that. Okay, now let's go to cloud formation. Let's see how we can make use of this. So this is there. It is basically useful to create and manage your resources. An exam directly comes there question most of the time that you have to provision your infrastructure or something. Automatically how you can do that. So here we'll click on create stack. Now in your create stack there are two things. One is if you have a ready template, as I mentioned, that you can either upload it from the S3 URL or from the template file. Use a sample template. So if you want to, like, these are some sample templates which you can use, like creating a LAMP stack, Ruby on Rails, WordPress blog, and other things. Create template in designer, so you can create a template in designer, but I'll go with the template is ready. I'll go to upload a template file, create file. Here I have template. It is loading. Now this template has been loaded. I'll click on next. Now here I can choose the instance type. Okay, whatever the instance type I want. I must choose the key name here. And I must write my exact name. So if I have to create more than one EC2 instances, I have to configure that in my resources. Right now it has only for one, so that is there. Otherwise in resources, you see that I told you that resources is one of the mandatory field here. So if you see here this resources, this one EC2 instance is there. If you have to configure more, you have to actually define all those things. Now you can give any permissions and all. In stack policies, you can write any stack policies. If you have already written in a JSON in your, you can upload it also. Okay. It looks like the same kind of IAM policies only, or like we can see the examples of that. Any rollback configuration notifications or any other stack creation options you want at rollback. Basically, if you want to disable the rollback, so you can disable it, and the termination protection. Click on next. Once you click on next, so it will say that review. We have reviewed. We say that instance type is this, key name is this, SSH location is this. I have not associated any tags, so no tags are there, no stack policies, nothing. Let's go and click on create stack. Now, as soon as I click on create stack, it will be create in progress. You see the timestamp, you see this, and status reason it will say user initiated. This is related to the EC2 instance where I should have one this elastic IP associated with that. So you see here, it shows that creation completed. How it shows, let's go ahead, let's go into this demo stack. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm there only. So you can choose this stack info from where you can actually get to know all the details of the stack info. Currently the state is create in progress, it's still creating. Now what is happening in background, we can see that in events. So in events we see that it has created EC2 instance is created in progress. It has allocated IP address, instance security group is done. Okay, whatever the security group has to be assigned. Now demo stack, this entire stack is there. It says resource creation initiated. Okay, it will allocate the elastic IP also once your EC2 instance is launched. So let's refresh it. You see IP association initiated, IP association has been completed, EC2 instance also it says completed. So in the event you can able to see all the entire history, whatever is being done. Okay, then resources, you can see what all resources has been launched, whatever you wanted, are all those has been launched or not. I told you that I want 2 IP, and this is the description I have written. Like, I will just show you that instance ID of newly created this. So instance ID of newly created, IP address of newly created. This is the description, and this is the instance IP address, and this is the instance ID. Let me see that do I really have any EC2 instance or not. So here I have one running instance ILS also. I'll go here. I will check my instance state is running. I have Elastic IP also associated with. This is how you can automatically deploy and provision your entire code. Now, let's say I want to, if I want to delete something, okay, and in the deletion, what happens basically that when you go ahead with the deletion, so deletion policy, what happens that it will basically resource should be either deleted or it should be preserved, or you can take the snapshot. Okay, when the stack is deleted, when you are deleting your stack. So you have to write one deletion policy, that is you write in your S3 bucket and you say that if I am creating some S3 bucket, so for that, the S3 bucket should be retained. Okay, it should retain that S3 bucket. Or if I want to retain the Elastic IP, so what I'll go here, I'll go to resources. Here, after this, I'll write deletion policy. And I'll say retain, but what I have to retain, so I have to retain EIP. So not here, but in EIP, I have to write it. I have to write with the EIP colon retain. Okay, like this. I have to write this. So it will basically retain your Elastic IP. So you have to define this in your JSON. Now, three options are there, like either delete, retain, and snapshot. Delete means it will delete. Retain means it will retain whatever the resource you want to retain. And snapshot means it will delete that resource, but it will, like, let's say if you have an RDS instance, so it will delete that RDS instance, but it will take the snapshot of that RDS instance so that you can, if you want to make use of that or if you want to launch it, you can launch it. Okay. Now let's go ahead here. Now, if I want to delete this stack, if you want to update also, so you have the update option here, and you have the like some there's a drift cloud formation drift also, but that is like, I'll check what is that right now. 1 second. Let's delete this stack here. Meanwhile, yeah. So this is one new feature actually for cloud formation drift detection, which basically says that it. 1 second. Okay, basically it provides you the detailed information. Okay, it compares your current stack configuration. Okay, and like if you want to, whatever the running stack configuration is there, if you want to like drift that template, and like if you don't want that template and if you want some other kind of a template for the same one, in that case it basically detects that particular configuration, and based on that it like do some changes and it will send you the report, and these kind of scenarios are there. Okay, so it says that you can perform drift detection on stacks like when create, complete, update, complete, and when the obviously when it is complete, then you can perform this kind of a feature. Okay, it's mainly useful for provision throughput one. So let's understand here. So now my this stack has been deleted. Let's see if my EC2 instance is deleted. So yes, my EC2 also deleted, my Elastic IP is also deleted. So this is one of the feature where you can actually provision your resources on your own. Okay, like provision the resources automatically by writing the code. Okay, by writing the code you can provision the resources. Any questions here, guys?
Do we have any limit, like how many instances we can create in one stack?
No, you can create as many as you want. It's a simple process which you are creating manually. Just you are automating that. Like you can in a one JSON you can write and you can do this thing. I forgot one small thing. Sorry, I just sorry. Let me just quickly create one stack. I wanted to show you guys one more thing. So yes, you don't have any limit here, and you can of course like create as many as things. You can even in one JSON only you can write to create your JSON, oh sorry, RDS, your S3 or ELB, and EC2 instances and everything. Okay, let me quickly.
Sachin, what are the best practices for doing this? So, what are the recommendations?
Recommendation like in terms of
Yeah, best practices for basically writing this cloud formation stack.
so see best practices that there should be, yeah, there should be the whatever the parameters which has to be there in the this template. Okay, that should be there where your resource is mandatory. Okay, now apart from that, like you should choose the JSON and the YAML. That is another thing. Then whatever you are defining, like whatever you are defining, that is again the part of template only. Think apart from like best practices in terms of coding you are asking, or like what I didn't got the like question.
Yeah, best practice as in, let's say that now you said that if you have a full stack, so how to do that? Should we configure multiple EC2 in one, or is it recommended that you can have database this thing separately? Can we create VPC in this? Can we have all the proper configuration that yeah, the web tier goes to the public network, the database tier goes to a private network, everything in this?
So yes, we can create the this VPCs and these things. Okay, so like the few of these is actually one, you should use the IAM roles and all those things. Okay, you should ensure that
Correct.
whatever the quota is there for whatever the limit and these things are there for your resources, those things should be there. So you like once you are creating the template, you should not embed the credentials in that. Okay, that is one important part. Okay, you should not like you should use the parameters and all which are related to AWS. Okay, you can use the nested stacks also. IAM roles you can use to control the access. Okay, you can organize your stack, like if you are using the S3 and all, you can define the life cycle and all those things and the ownerships. Then you should use the policies. You should define the cloud trails and all those things to monitor the logs and these things. And you should review your code, like that's the one last thing, that you should review your code to control and manage your templates. These are the only best practices like which are recommended by AWS also. Means so it basically says that you should plan and organize your stacks. Okay, like that how you have to like organize your stack, what is the sequence it should be there. Okay, and then you can create your template which basically describes your resources, whatever the software application has to be run on them, that those things are there, and accordingly you should then manage your stack and the resources which are there, part of those things. So did I answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay, here we can see this in the graphical way also. So this is a template. So this is a template which I have deployed. If I click on view in designer, so you see when I click on view on designer, here it shows you the relationship actually, that this EC2 instance is associated with your security group and with your IP address. Sorry, elastic IP address. This elastic IP address will always be associated with instance. So now if you will have a more complex, you can see more complex kind of structure. You can even like download this diagram, okay, and as an image, and basically you can give it to your client or something if he or she want to see the architecture, that how you actually want to design your infrastructure. So as an architect point of view, this is very important to understand this, that guys, how actually you define your infrastructure and these things. So either you can directly you like, if you don't know the coding and these things, so you can make use of these resource types and all, and you can define all these things here. So if it is EC2, so you can, like, let's say capacity reservation, so you have to drag and drop it, is only the concept is there by which you can do these things. Now here, this my template JSON is there, and this you can convert it into YAML from here. And if it is, suppose someone is doing a DevOps and these things, so you can give this entire YAML to him. And YAML is also used as one of the configuration management, so he can use those things also. So it shows you the, so no components in template. Okay, components, template, components, it says that whatever this is there. But from architecture point of view, Prasad, if you like see this kind of a diagram, so normally, like, if I would be the client, like I might know not know what is, like, how your architecture looks like, how you want to plan your AWS architecture. In those kind of a scenarios, you can actually use this kind of thing, because as an architect, you know that you know the internal terminologies of AWS, but client would not know. But when he see this thing, so then you can say that, okay, I'll have to for this server, I will have this IP address which will always be retained, will not be, like, it will not change. This will basically provide me security and these things. So he might have more, because we know that in today's IT industry, people, like, mostly like are looking for graphical representations. Sorry.
Yeah, and also one thing is, can we also create a VPC in this? A new VPC with all the elastic IPs and stacks and subnets.
I guess you can create it. Let me just quickly see this. So this does not say this, but it does not say. It says, yeah. You can create this.
Okay.
Auto scaling. So these are the things which you can create. You can create auto scaling batch, DynamoDB, EC2.
Also, some time ago you said that there is a possibility that you already have some EC2 instance and you are going to add couple of instances. So how do you exactly add, and also if there is an auto scaling group or an elastic load balancer, how do you tell them that these are the new two resources that have been formed by the your cloud formation, and how will you embed that?
Yeah. So when you select this, so you have to go to update. Okay, and then you have to again, like, either you can update via the designer, or you can, like, use, like, your current template only, so it will, like, add one more in this, or you have to replace your current template, and whatever the new template, new code you write, you have to upload that code. Okay, so basically, like, in that scenario, definitely that you can actually, like, whatever the earlier design you have and the new design will have, that will definitely be changed once when the resources have been added.
Okay, got okay.
Guys, this is a very, very important system, from a developers and from others point of view, mainly from architect point of view. So this is very important, because it provides you the this visual representation complete. Okay, so now probably, yeah, this is the last topic actually for today. That is the AWS monitoring trusted advisor. Like, I don't wanted to go ahead with more other services, like, to tell all 20 services together and create a chaos kind of a situation. So AWS monitoring trusted advisor is basically one of the monitoring service. Okay, it's a very, very important and very good service. It is also, and this service, like, you don't need to install anything, you don't need to code anything, nothing has to be done. So be happy, no code now. This service basically assess your account. Okay, it is an account assessment service. So this service assess your account, and it tells you, or it basically determines on the following factors which are written here, like cost optimization, performance, security, fault tolerance, and service limits. that how you can improve your environment more. Okay. Trusted advisor is one of a service or one of a monitoring service which basically assesses your account and gives you the opportunity to save money, improve system performance, reliability, or other security gaps. How all this happens here is that it basically keeps on checking or keeps on scanning the resources and the things. Once it is done, it tells you that okay, how like you can improve or what all drawbacks or what all the things are there. How it do is that it basically do the color coding on the base of the status thing which is written here. That would be your like red, orange, and green. And so here my red says that action is recommended, orange says that yellow, sorry, this is like orange or yellow, whatever it is, it says investigation recommended, and green says no problem detected. Okay. By default, yeah, it has a big, you have to go ahead and buy the plan for this. So normally it is like obviously it is a global service first of all. Okay, it is a global service, not the region specific service. The second point is in the basic and in the developer plan, you get for the trusted advisor, you get 7 default core checks on its own. So out of those 7, one is your service limit, and rest 6 is your some S3 bucket permissions, security, unrestricted security groups, your IAM users, MFA on the root users, EBS snapshots, you have RDS accounts, and these, yeah. So these are the some 7 services which you use it. Okay. Now, as I said that it analyzes your accounts and do the things. So based on the cost optimization, it checks that what are your underutilized EC2 instance, what is your idle ELB, performance, it says what are your highly utilized EC2 instance, what are the rules are there, security group, unrestricted access, IAM password policies, fault tolerance, it says that if it is distributed across a region or AWS RTS, service limit basically say that if you have exceeded the quota or something like that. Okay, let's try to understand this in a detail from here. Let me just delete this tag. So I'll go here with trusted advisor. So if you see this trusted advisor here, so it comes under the optimized performance and security service. Okay. So now you see that based on these are the factors on which it determines. Okay. Let's say if I go to cost optimization, so it says that upgrade your support plan to unlock all, as I have a free tier or the basic plan, so it will not give me this. It basically gives all this in the enterprise and the business plan only. But we can see that what all services it utilize. It says that low utilization Amazon EC2 instances. It will alert yellow, it will alert when instance had 10% or less daily average CPU utilization and 5 MB or less network IO, or at least 4 of the previous 14 days. What are the recommended actions you can do? Okay. And then it says ideal load balancers. Okay. So what are the alert criteria for ideal load balancers? It also checks for the underutilized EBS volumes, elastic IP address, the ideal DB instances, route 53, and other saving plans. It will tell you that how you can basically, it checks your usage and these things and helps you to reduce your cost. So it's Elastic Cache and Redshift. This it gives you in the cost optimization. When I say about performance, so for performance again, it will say that what are the EC2 instances, how it basically will like more than 90% for 4 or more days. So what it will alert you yellow and these things like that it will happen. Your SSD volumes which are attached. Okay, any number of rules. If you have a very large number of rules in EC2 security, or large number of rules applied to a particular instance in a security group, your route 53 related details, magnetic volumes and throughput, and cloud front and these things. Cloud front we'll discuss and all. Security, like it is enabled in this. So it says that MFA on root account. I don't have MFA enabled on root account. So it basically says this. You can always refresh it. You can download this report also in a format of Excel. You can download this report. Okay. Let's not download it. Specific port. So it says that, so you see here this, it says that security group specific is giving me red alert. So it says that I have allowed unrestricted access, that is public access I have allowed for a specific port. Okay. Now it will tell me also that for I have almost allowed for all the things. So it will tell me all those details. It will give me for which I have allowed the public access. Okay. It will tell me all those details. It will give me here. So there are 41 things which I have put that. Similarly, EBS public snapshot, if it is like 0 EB, if I have marked any snapshot as a public, if I have marked any RDS DB as a public, if I have marked any S3 bucket permissions as a public, or I am user or something, if I have created like at least one I am user should be there for this account. So ideally, like AWS recommends that you should not use root account, like which we are doing wrong for this, but we should create one user account and we should use user account. Similarly, for fault tolerance, we have the services, and similarly for service limit, we have where basically it checks that 0 of 16 have users is more than 80% of the service limit. So like if it is having more than 80, it will alert you for auto scaling. For cloud formation, if anything is there. Similarly for DynamoDB, EBS, for your EC2 also, if like more than 80 elastic IP addresses, 80% of elastic IP addresses are there. So 0 of 1 on-demand instances limit, reserved instances limit, and these kind of scenarios are there for your IML, these things. So this is a very good service to analyze your account and to minimize your cost and do these things. You can like view all those things in your dashboard, take the recommended actions, whatever are there. As I said, red is for recommended actions. We don't have anything else. So yellow, we don't have any, so it will not get that. But this is how you can create, and you can basically tell to your client, or basically you can show as for the compliance and all other things also. From a security point of view, it is important for compliance and all those things. For a quota limit or things exceeding, if your bill is coming too high or something, you can definitely enable this, take this support plan and go ahead and work with this. So yeah, this is the all about the trusted advisor. Any questions here?
Yeah, trusted advisor is only available for the business plan, right?
Business and enterprise.
Okay.
There is one enterprise also. So actually there are 4 plans. One is basic and one is developer. So basic and developer, it checks 7 core processes. Okay. Like which I told,
Yeah.
service limit and other 6 are different. Then for business and enterprise, it's all the, okay. So any questions guys for the entire session? Anything? We'll be winding up the session here for today. Okay, so no questions. So let me just like conclude the session. So we discussed about the Snowball, which is basically used for the data transfer and the migration services. Here we talked about a very cool feature which is not being asked too much, but a very cool feature about the Snowmobile 45-foot long container. Then we talked about the ops work where we use for a chef and puppet. Elastic transcoder where basically we use for the conversion of the media files. AWS workspace we create for the VDI, that is for the virtual desktops. AWS app sync we do for the mobile applications and the web applications, these to sync the data between this and from AWS to mobile and the web applications. In this we talked about the Cognito sync, where if we talk about the GraphQL, which is a mobile language by Facebook, so you will be using the going with the app sync as Cognito sync. We talked about the AWS glue. So can anyone just remind me what is AWS glue? Can anyone just
it's basically ETL service.
Yeah, so it was basically for the ETL service. We had talked about AWS glue data catalog also when we include metadata here. Then we talked about the CI/CD where it is useful for the continuous integrations and deployment. Then we talked about anything which are related to containers or the Docker services, ECS. Here, whatever the Docker repositories or the images are stored, they are stored in the Elastic Container Registry. Then to manage all this and to deploy the containers and the disks, we use EKS, that is Elastic Kubernetes Services. Then for the visual workflows and to basically to manage the state transitions or the state-based machines, mainly for the JSON related and these things. For the key pairs, we use step functions and SWF. Most of the time, AWS recommends to go with the step function as it is the serverless. if there is, until and unless there is some external human intervention required, you can use step functions. Otherwise, you have to use the SWF. Then we talked about the EMR, which is basically for the Hadoop based systems, where you basically creates the cluster and do the transform things for you. Then we talked about the cloud formation, which is infrastructure as a code, where we saw that how you can actually provision your instances or the resources by creating the stack, how you can update them, how you can delete them, how you can view that in the designer. And then we talked about the trusted advisory, which is a monitoring tool which basically assess your account and which helps you to for the cost savings for exceeding your quotas or limits, and the also for the compliance purpose because it gives you the security features as well. So yeah, this is all about the